Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Congratulations. We have made it to the middle of the week. That feels like an accomplishment for everybody. We are so excited to have you streaming with us this evening, whether you are local to St. Louis or you are somewhere else across the country. We couldn't be more excited that you are here. My name is Stephanie. I'm the director of events and curated collections for The Novel Neighbor. We are an independent bookstore located in St. Louis, Missouri, specifically Webster Groves, if you happen to be in St. Louis and want to know our specific area. And we have two of our favorite middle grade authors this evening. You're not supposed to say favorites. We know that we love so many middle grade authors, but I really mean it when I say that, like, the two who are coming on the screen soon are somebody that, like, everyone on staff reads their books. We're super excited to hand sell them. There's lots of love here. And one of them was just with us in person not that long ago. So we are super excited to have a chance to see her again, and that she is our conversation partner this evening for our celebration this week of a book launch. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Karina Glaser, who is a New York Times bestselling author of the Vanderbeeker series and the standalone middle grade novel Duet from Home. She is a contributing editor for Book Riot and lives in Harlem with her husband, 2 kids, an assortment of rescue animals and houseplants. We're all hoping, I know Jennifer and I are both hoping to see an appearance of all the rescue animals this evening. One of her proudest achievements is raising 2 kids who can't go anywhere without a book. That feels like she did something right. I think we can all agree. And like I said, Vanderbeeker series won a Spotlight Vanderbeekers on the road. If you are in St. Louis, you get a special shout out on this one. So, like, just revel in that. And Karina is joining us to celebrate the incredible Jennifer Chambliss Bertman. She is the author of the New York Times bestselling Book Scavenger series, as well as the new Sisterhood of Sleuths. She holds an MFA in creative writing and has worked in a variety of roles with children and in publishing. Born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, Jennifer now lives in Colorado with her family. So that's right. We all have 3 different time zones we're coming at you from this evening, and we all got on at the same time. That's another win for everybody. You can check out more about Jennifer at chamblissbertman.com. I'll make sure I throw up that link in a second if you want to check out her website. But please join me in celebrating the book birthday of Sisterhood of Sleuths. She's a whole day old. That's incredible. And Jennifer, Karina, hi. Hello, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited. I'm going to let you two take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Great. Hi. Okay. So happy to be here. Happy book birthday to this amazing book.
Thank you.
And welcome everyone who's joining us. Okay. So Jennifer and I have known each other for many years now, and we met each other as our first books were going out into the world. And one of the things that I think was so special about our friendship is, like, it just clicked automatically. And so I don't know if anyone who's watching us right now, if that's ever happened, but it's such a special thing. And we have a lot in common, and we also are different. And it's just really fun to celebrate this book together. So Jennifer is also the author of all of these wonderful Book Scavenger books, and just love them so much. So I'm just going to have some questions for you, Jennifer, and probably just a lot of silly things too, or whatever comes up. We'll see where the conversation goes.
Great.
So, okay. So I know you've had a busy day. You've had some school visits already, and then you have to get on a plane after our talk. So let's just start at the very beginning. Like, I know you've been working on this book for a while. Can you share a little bit of, like, when this began? Like, when did the seeds of this story begin? And, like, how did it change from your original idea to what it is now?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's interesting because it changed quite a lot. With this book, there were 3 quite different versions. And the very, very beginning seeds of this story, I wanted to write a funny mystery that was just kind of a personal challenge for myself. And I really wanted to write a mystery that had to do with Nancy Drew. I loved Nancy Drew when I was a kid, and it was my gateway to loving mysteries, I think. I also have read a lot about the history behind the series, and I just thought that was really interesting. And this idea kind of was percolating while I was working on Book Scavenger, and that has different bits of literary history. So it was things that I was thinking about that wouldn't work in Book Scavenger, but it's bubbling up as another idea. But my original concept for the story was that Nancy Drew was going to be a character herself. I wanted to write a story where she came out of a book, and the mystery was trying to figure out how to get her back in the book, and she's working with modern day kids. And I just had a lot of fun with that concept, and I wrote a draft of that story, and I really loved it a lot. But when my editor and I came to be talking about publishing a Nancy Drew book, we talked about, the realities of using Nancy Drew as an actual character. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a path we could have gone down, but it would have just been quite complicated and probably wouldn't have ended up being the vision my own vision. And so I shifted course. But because I love that other version so much that I wrote, I just couldn't separate the characters that I'd created with that story. So I really started completely over, other than the Nancy Drew aspect. But I had this character living in my head, Maizy, who didn't have a name at the time, but she was just a girl I'd been thinking about, who was, someone who was used to a lot of stability in her life and then has a bunch of things change all at once, including, a friendship that she always thought she could rely on, and a brother going away to college, and just other certain things in life, kind of that upheaval. I think many people in their childhood have those moments, where things you kind of take for granted just as is shift. And there's just an adjustment to getting used to that. So I was thinking about that character, Maizy, and I thought, what if she is the character that somehow interacts with Nancy Drew, the fictional, not a character in my story, but the Nancy Drew stories. And so that's the beginning of Sisterhood of Sleuths. Thinking about this modern day character and how she would interact with a historical set of Nancy Drew books, how she would relate to that character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Maizy, tell us how you got that name.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. So actually, I, at a school, I just got distracted by your cat.
I know. She's just slowly leaving the frame.
I may have pet appearances too. But Maizy, the name Maizy, and her brother Max, I had at a school auction had put up, for a raffle, the opportunity to name a character in a future book. And so the person that won, the child that won, they had just lost 2 pets named Max and Maizy. And they said I could pick whichever one. But I love both names. I couldn't pick. And so I made them both in the book.
I love that. That's so sweet. Which, by the way, I'm wearing a Nancy Drew sweatshirt. I don't know if you can see in celebration. You see the Nancy Drew. I'm getting confused with this camera because it's flipped. So I'm anyways, I love this sweatshirt.
I have a shirt, but I wore it yesterday. So I guess you all can't tell if I stink.
Yeah, you could have worn it.
What was I thinking?
Okay, so I love that beginning because I think sometimes, as writers, we feel or maybe as readers, we think, this book seemed like it just came out so easily, it's so fluid, and you would never guess that you had written a whole draft, sent it to your editor, and then rewrote the whole thing. It does feel very just so polished and smooth. I can't imagine you working for years and years and years on it and switching it around, and it just seems so great. In the very beginning, it starts off with Maizy having sort of this feeling that her best friend, longtime best friend Izzy, is they're just not connecting in the way that they have before. how did you, I mean, it feels like very real, like in terms of what generally happens at various times in people's lives with a friendship where things seem like a little confusing and you're not quite sure what's going on. What went through your mind when you were writing the character of Izzy?
Oh, thank you for saying that. That was something I was really hoping it would feel real and relatable. I wanted to try and portray, I don't know, I feel like I've probably been on both sides of this, where you're the one wanting everything to stay the same and you're not ready to move on to the next stage, of whatever is ahead for you, or you're the one that's ready to step out and grow. And your partner, the person that you're used to doing everything with, isn't. And so I was, thinking about those, for me, I was drawing on personal memories of, I was, slower to want to, still, I haven't left my child behind, my childhood behind. I still love children's books and I still love all the things that I loved when I was a kid. But, I was that one, like Maizy, that was like more content for a longer period of time than not wanting to spread my wings as much. And so I was drawing on that a bit for Maizy, but I also really wanted, Izzy, I was trying hard not to make her, I just want her to feel well-rounded, because I feel like she's also relatable. You're getting through Maisy's point of view. So I feel like, I sympathize with Maizy, but I am hoping that Izzy doesn't come across like a mean girl. I wanted there to be a little more nuance with her, that, she's going through her own things and she's wanting to make her own changes. And it's just that they're not on the same path. And that sometimes happens, and I tried to show with the character of Nell, a old friend of Maisy's, who Maizy reconnects with in the story, that sometimes you're along the same path with someone and things change and then you might reconnect. And that there's a lot of ways friendships can ebb and flow. So I think I was really thinking about a lot of aspects of friendship when I was writing this.
Yeah, and I thought that was really beautiful too, because you talk about, Izzy in the beginning and sort of how friendship is sort of shifting with her and Maizy, and then you sort of, Maizy starts finding other friendships and other people, like in this group project that they're doing together. How did you come up with those other two characters, Nell and Cam? Because when I think about like sisterhood and just like some of the themes from your book, I sort of am thinking about like these friendships that sort of surround Maizy in different ways. And so I find it interesting, like all the different characters that you surround her with.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, with Nell and Cam, I think a big part of my inspiration was drawing on the Nancy Drew series and just kind of having fun with modernizing the characters. So, Nell is sort of my riff on Bess and Cam is sort of my riff on George. And that's sort of the beginning seeds of where they started as characters.
And have you read all the Nancy Drews?
Oh, I'm sure not.
No, okay.
But there's a lot. So I've read, and I read a lot of them when I was young and moved on to at that time as a child of the 80s. And so I was given the yellow spine edition, which was hand-me-down. But then I went to the library and discovered, I think it was the Nancy Drew Files was the modern series at that time that was being published. So then I was reading those. And then from there, though, I think I discovered Lois Duncan and, I went off in all sorts of directions with mysteries. So, yeah.
Has mystery always been your favorite genre?
I think it probably has. I like to read all sorts of things, but, I love a story that just keeps pulling me through, and a well-done mystery will do that for me, where you just want to keep turning the pages to find out what happens.
Do you think that growing up like the books you read influence the books you write?
Oh yeah, totally. Yes, I mean 100%. Obviously, I mentioned Nancy Drew, but with the Book Scavenger series, that started with me thinking about the Westing game. That was one of my favorites when I was younger, and the Egypt game by Zilpha Keatley Snyder, and from the Mixed Files of Miss Basley Frankweiler. So I definitely had a lot of, those were specific influences. But I think do you find that too? Are your books influenced by things you read when you're from your childhood?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, I mean, some definitely were influenced by what I read, and then I think some of what wasn't available.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that with your books too, like you're sort of modernizing Nancy Drew, and in the same way with the Vanderbeeker books, I feel like that was sort of like modernizing those like big family stories that were really popular.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because I think the stories from my childhood definitely fed my imagination and they inspired me. But, there's always pieces of ourselves, at least for me, there's things that I didn't see represented. And so that's our power as writers, that we can put that into the stories and put the pieces, that we have that we don't see reflected into our own version of the Westing game, or, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I think that's like a pretty, I guess like a lot of authors I've talked to, they talk about, they are writing stories that they weren't seeing when they were growing up. And yeah, I think that's really important that we're living now in a time where so many more kids are having access to all sorts of books that reflect a variety of experiences. When I was growing up, I always loved the Babysitters Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like your books sort of remind me a little bit, at least Sisterhood of Sleuths does, of like sort of like these intrepid kids who are like trying to find, they're like forming a group and they're trying to work together. And I love how Maizy is like, she figures something out and she just like can't wait to like share it with the group. And like other people are also talking and she's like, okay, but like what about what I have to say? Like I'm just waiting, which I think was so well done, because that is exactly how groups are, where you're just sort of learning how to work together and listen and communicate.
Yeah.
Well,
I was excited when you mentioned Babysitters Club, because that was probably an influence for me too, I'm sure, especially the scenes with the kids and the babysitting. And I started my own babysitting club in 6th grade with my friends.
Oh, you did? I love that.
And it was mainly driven not from a business-minded pursuit, but a love of the books and the characters and wanting it to be real. And maybe if we made our own club, I would magically become more like Claudia, because she's a favorite character. So it didn't happen, but I did end up with a pretty successful babysitting business, so that worked out.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I feel like those books really have a resurgence now with like the Netflix show and the graphic novels.
Yeah,
like it's pretty fun to see kids really excited about those books. There is something very special about them. I was wondering, okay, for your Book Scavenger series, there's 3 books. How did you know that 3 was going to be it? Like, did you think that from the very beginning, like that you knew that there are 3 stories in there, or did you sort of come about it like book by book?
yeah, I really didn't. I wrote Book Scavenger only thinking about it as a standalone, because I was so unsure if it would ever sell. It's almost like being superstitious, that even though there were times where I feel like this could be a series, but I didn't want to jinx myself, I guess. And I think at that time too, and this still may be the advice, but I was hearing a lot of people saying, you don't want to pitch like 12 book series, that you just have one book and then maybe it will turn into a series. But for whatever reason, it was too overwhelming for me. So I just thought of Book Scavenger as its own story. And my editor, when she wanted to publish it, she wanted to do a sequel. And so then that opened up the floodgates for myself of the ideas I've been not letting myself entertain. And she also at that time knew about my Nancy Drew book. So she signed on that as well. But then the third Book Scavenger book came up because the first two were starting to take off and a lot of people were reading them and wanting to read more. And so I put aside the Nancy Drew story and focused on Book Scavenger. So really, for me, I see Book Scavenger more as on pause and I really crafted each novel. I tried to make them, there's, certain things that carry over a little bit, but I really wanted them to stand on their own as a mystery. And I feel like some aspects of the first book would be spoiled if you read the second or third out of order, but you can read any of them out of order, and I don't think it would be that confusing. So that was something that I wanted them to try and stand on their own. But I don't have plans yet to write more, but I have, I feel like there's potential that there could be more.
Okay, which brings me to sisterhood. Are you writing another book for sisterhood?
I'm not writing another one for Sisterhood of Sleuths right now. That's another one that I feel like I had so much fun with these characters. I really enjoyed spending time with Maizy and Nell and Cam, and I had other ideas for mysteries that they might have gotten caught up in. So I feel like there's potential there too. I'm currently working on a different standalone mystery, so I'd have to finish that one first. But yeah, I feel like both I would like to. I need a more time freezer, so I have more time to.
Yeah, I feel like all of us are in the same boat. Yeah. Okay, so you're working on another middle grade mystery?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to writing sisterhood. So the idea of it came when you had finished the second Book Scavenger book. Is that right?
I think no, it was during Book Scavenger when I was drafting. Book Scavenger was the first seed.
The first one. Okay.
And once I handed that off to my agent, then I started working on this Nancy Drew idea.
Okay, got it. So it's been in the works for a long time.
It has, yeah.
Yeah. So how does it feel like now that it's?
It feels so good. It feels great. Like finally, no, it's really good because it's been on such a journey, thinking about the different iterations, but it's really funny how it has changed. There's a tiny bit from that very first version where I put the whole characters, everybody is living in a drawer, because maybe I'll revisit them in another form someday. But there was one little bit in there where the characters that has to do with Nancy Drew that I really liked. And so that is still in the final version, but everything else is different. But it's so interesting to me how even though each version changed so much of what I started out with in the beginning, like what I was really thinking about with, my fascination with Nancy Drew, the history behind the series, and a modern day girl interacting with all of that, and just the themes I think about with Nancy Drew, it's there in the finished version. It just feels, I don't know, it's a weird process writing, how how you can go through all these different iterations and then end with something that's so different in one way from what you were thinking you were starting out with, but it feels like this is the book I wanted to write all along, even though it's nothing at all like what I was wanting to write,
Right.
Yeah.
So I noticed you did like a lot of research, and your characters in the book, I could see that you sort of placed different people to serve as different roles of us understanding who Nancy Drew was. And so I'm sure that was like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle to try to like convey information that I guess most people wouldn't know because Maizy in the beginning, like the way that she's introduced to Nancy Drew is just seeing this box of books arrive at her mom's consignment store, and so that's like what gets her to like start asking questions about it and reading the books. But there's a lot to Nancy Drew that maybe not a lot of people know about. Can you like share what that research was like for you? Like, did you do a lot of research online? Did you have to travel anywhere to look at anything, or like what was that process like?
I did, I read a lot of books and online. I did the bulk of the research during pandemic time, so I was a little bit limited on some of my travel options. But I've had kind of a working knowledge just because I've been interested in the history behind the books. But I went back and reread, some other book, just different sources, and just to try and work in those details.
I don't think it would be a spoiler, but do you think it might be interesting for people who are watching to like get a little glimpse of like who Nancy Drew was? Because I feel like I didn't really even know until I read the books when I was younger, but I didn't really know like about Nancy Drew, like who wrote the books and those types of things until later. I don't know if it's a spoiler.
Because it is something that characters discover, which is also some of it. There are maybe people watching that know some of the things about Carolyn Keene and the history behind Nancy Drew. So
maybe we'll save it for after, like maybe that's a good book club topic after kids have read it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to see all like the little illustrations inside. How did that come along? Like, you worked with Vesper Stamper.
Yes, she's amazing. And that is all her. I'll show, I have here. So first of all, I just love the map, that there's a map of Larksville is the name of the town. And so she did a map, and then, each chapter, wait, where's my camera?
Yeah. I know, that's how I feel too. It's like the opposite.
Little, here's books, and there's like a magnifying glass and the closed hat, and marbles, because there's marbles that are significant in a scene. And then she also has these big full page illustrations. I just love it was really neat to see and the lobster is significant in the story. And so it was just really fun to see, and it's so interesting. I mean, that was I'm sure along with art director, but I just saw early sketches, and yay, it looks great,
yeah, at the end. So did you have, basically Vesper read your manuscript and then sort of came up with like spot art and like where like a scene would look good?
Yeah, I think my editor had marked the scenes, that she thought would be good for illustrating. And I probably did see that, just to give my 2 cents on it. But I feel like everything that she called out, I was like, yes, I would love to see that illustrated. So, and then, Vesper did her initial sketches. And so then, seeing that, and I feel like at that stage, I know we can give feedback or notes if there's things we notice, but I don't remember, it's like, I just am always in so much awe of illustrators. I want to be able to do that. It's just like magic to be like, oh, the story and pictures. So it's just
like, it's so amazing. I think it does add a little to the story to be able to visualize something. I feel like her art style really works well with the story too. Yeah.
And I feel like she leaves room to where if something isn't exactly the way, I might have imagined it in my mind, it still works. There's still room. Like, I think there's one illustration that's in the back of Alter Ego, the consignment store. And, when I saw it, it's not exactly how I imagined it in my mind, but it still totally works with the story. And I feel like it doesn't change it, it's like, no, yes, that's how it can be. So it's just, she leaves like an openness where I feel like if a reader is seeing something slightly different, it doesn't make you feel like, I've read books occasionally where you're picturing something. Maybe it happens more when something's turned into a movie and you haven't seen anything visualized for you. And then they visualize it for you. And it's like, this is not what I was imagining at all, So, but yeah, I feel like she leaves that openness for the reader to bring their imagination to it too.
Yeah, definitely. When you were writing this book, did you feel like you wrote the majority of it at a certain time? Like, I know it's sort of like the idea spanned many years, but did the bulk of like what readers are going to read, like when they open this book, was that written during the pandemic or was that before that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The second version was written. I handed it over to my editor like end of 2019, beginning of 2020. So I was doing this third version. We were into the pandemic a bit, but it was definitely in that, which I think is part of why I had so much fun with the characters, not because the pandemic was fun, but it was an outlet for me to just, escape difficult things and have fun with the characters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So did you, I mean, during the pandemic, obviously you wrote at home. Do you generally write at home?
I do. Yeah, I write probably almost exclusively at home. Every so often I'll try to mix things up and maybe write at a coffee shop or the library, or I try to write when I'm traveling, but I don't know, it doesn't work quite as well I just get easily distracted, I think. And even though I get distracted at home too, I have more rituals to bring myself back to my work, I think, than if I'm at the library books, or people and, so it's like, so mainly I do most of my work at home now.
Uh-huh. Do you have an office or do you work on the kitchen table or?
I do have an office in our house. My husband also works at home. So we both needed kind of our own spaces. His work is more talking on phones and my work is more quiet in my head. So we needed to be away.
Yeah. Are you on opposite sides of the house?
Yeah. So fortunately we live in a place where we have more space than houses here. So we could do that. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite writing snack?
Oh, do I have a favorite writing snack? Skinny popcorn. I think that's what it's called. That's my current favorite thing. But I also I'm hooked on almond milk mochas. That's not really a snack, but that's kind of when I
beverage
early to write, and that's like I have to have my coffee, and then I'll write well.
Do you make that yourself? Like you make it at home? Oh, that sounds really good. Are you working on the other middle grade right now, or are you have you been working on it like in the last year?
Yeah, I've been working on it. Yeah, in the last year, I'm kind of in the middle of it, working through the middle to end, I guess. Yeah, I think it'll be out in 2024. I think is maybe the plan.
Okay, all right, that's good. So why don't you tell people, because I know people are tuning in from all over the place, and you said you have some in-person events this weekend.
Yeah, I do. If anyone is in California, in Northern California, I am going to be doing an event at the Linden Tree Bookstore, and I'll be with Lisa Moore-Rami, and I'm going to be doing another event at Books Inc. In Palo Alto, and I'll be in conversation with Sally Engelfried there, and so that I'm really excited. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. And then today you had some school visits.
I did, yes.
Yeah. Did you get any interesting questions from kids, like during Q&A about the book?
They always ask really great questions. I'm trying to remember now some of, and my brain's going blank on them, but it was a lot of, talking about inspiration for different, ideas and where different, a lot of people, I thought it was interesting, just the different things people will focus on, but there was a lot of discussion about covers. And
Oh, yeah.
in one of the schools, that seemed to be a theme that someone brought up, and then that kind of, everyone starts having questions and thoughts about covers and how they relate to the story inside. So,
did Vesper do the cover?
no,
too?
Sarah Watts, the illustrator who did the Book Scavenger book.
Yeah, okay, because I noticed that there was, like, you can tell that there's, like, a theme. I mean, that is interesting about the cover. Did it always have two people in front, or?
Yes, I think so. There might have been a version, I think there were some versions where they played around with one silhouette, two silhouettes, three silhouettes, and I think they decided that two looked best aesthetically. I was kind of hoping for three because of, I was thinking of Nell and
Cam, and I thought it was like, you can tell that, like, these are your books, which is what I like about it. Like, it's different enough that you know that it's not the same series, but it's similar enough that like, it's almost like your signature or something. Like,
I love one of my favorite details is the flying books, because it's on, at least it's definitely on Book Scavenger. I think all of the Book Scavenger covers have flying books, but that just felt like a nice nod, and it works for this because this is a bookish story too, so it relates, but it's just a nice kind of thread through all of them.
Does your new book also have, like, book history or book trivia in there?
At the moment it doesn't. Who knows? That might change. But the one I'm working on is set in 1985, so it has a lot of 80s stuff.
Oh, awesome!
The characters are all
wearing scrunchies and neon.
Yes, of course. Lace gloves. But they're all in different ways fans of Stephen. I almost said Stephen Kellogg. It's been a long day. Spielberg, his movies. So they all have different favorite Spielberg projects. And anyway, so it's been fun to work with 80s things.
Yeah, I love that. So in this book, okay,
you're totally fine. Finish up.
Oh, okay. I probably just have another question, and then I guess I wanted to return to, like, the three kids in the group, because I really enjoyed their chemistry. Can you just tell us a little bit more about, like, how they formed? You said that they were a part of, partly inspired by Nancy Drew and, like, her friends, but you definitely, they're modern. They're, like, modern kids with modern ideas. Did you have fun with, like, writing those three girls and like how they interacted with each other?
Yeah, for sure. It was just, I think I took an aspect that I maybe identified, I remember Bess being more cautious and maybe more thinking about her appearance than the others. But with Nell, I wanted to turn that more, just give her more substance than I felt like Bess had. And so, she has the fashion bent, and I just had a lot of fun with that. And Cam, George, I think, is always thought of as the athletic one. And so Cam is, she's sporty, but she's also very bookish, and she's more introverted. It was just really fun interplaying with all their different personalities. And with Maizy, for her, I was kind of thinking, because one of the things for me when I read the Nancy Drew books, and I really looked up to Nancy Drew and admired how she would throw anything at her and she figures it out, and it was just like, how did she do that? And but as I got older, I just thought, like, I did not feel at all like Nancy Drew. And so I had a lot of fun trying to make Maizy. Maizy's kind of clumsy. Maizy, there's a lot of things with Maizy where that was just fun to be almost like an anti-Nancy Drew, because that's what I related to. And, just making the main character like that. And she can still figure things out too. You don't have to be Nancy Drew, knows how to fly a plane and speak any language you throw at her, and
Yeah, I mean, I like that they were just real characters and didn't feel like you had to be like this perfectly polished person to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
Anyways, I really like them, and I also really like Jacuzzi a lot. Maisy's grandmother. That was funny. A funny name too.
It's amused myself.
Yeah. How did that name come about?
It was, I don't remember like why it popped in my head, but in the story, her real name is Susie. So calling her Susie when Maizy was 3 came out as Jacuzzi. But yeah, I don't even remember. I don't know, that you probably do that with your stories too, where you just pop something in kind of to entertain yourself. And I'm often
sticks.
Gonna stay.
Yeah.
And then it sticks. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love it. Yeah, I don't know if we want to take some other questions.
Yeah, we have some great audience questions. I think we first have to give a shout out. Great question asking. Amazing conversation. It's been so fun. But also, shout out to giving us a Courtney booty.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
That's really a weird guy. But he popped in there.
Wednesday night treat. Jennifer, is your dog around? Is she hanging out at all?
My dog went for a walk. So when he comes back, I'll see if he wants to follow. So we'll see. Yeah.
Sounds like a well-timed walk.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
hello.
Wallow.
Oh, wow.
He is fed and happy. He just chased the cat a little bit on the bed. So.
Oh, I didn't see the kitty cat at all. That's hilarious.
Yeah, she's hiding.
Oh, well, yeah, that's fair. Wow, incredible content. Incredible pet content being brought this evening. We have some great questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask those, but also if y'all haven't put a question in the chat that you want to, please drop them in. We'll make sure that we get to as many as we can this evening. Our first question is, can be applied differently to each of you. So, because I know, Karina, I think, unless I'm misspeaking, hopefully, are we planning on getting more Vanderbeekers?
Yes, there's one more coming.
That's okay. That's what I thought. So your question will be slightly different, but Jennifer, let's start with you, and then I'll amend this question a little bit for Karina. But what do you miss the most when you finish a series? Or in this case, where at least for now, you're not writing another Sisterhood of Sleuths, you're writing a different standalone. Like, what do you miss when you are like done with it? Or do you not miss anything and you are like, I washed my hands of you. You're out into the world. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
That's a great question. I feel like with Sisterhood of Sleuths, I really miss Maizy and Nell and Cam. And I miss the kids that they interact with, Gabriella and Michael and Chloe. There's some young kids in there. So I just miss writing them. But I will say now I miss the book scavenger characters. But when I had just finished the Alcatraz Escape, that had been a lot in a short amount of time. So I did have a little bit of like, we need a little time apart with scavenger characters, but that's good. Distance is good sometimes for our relationships with our fictional friends.
Absolutely. Karina, I know you haven't said goodbye to the Vanderbeekers yet. Unless you finish the manuscript, in which case maybe you're emotionally going through a goodbye that we have yet to experience. But, when you took a break to write a duet from home, you left the Vanderbeekers off to the side for a second, I imagine, but maybe you wrote both at the same time. So if you did write both at the same time, what was that like for you? Or what was it like to take a break from the Vanderbeekers and go and do a standalone?
Yeah, so the Vanderbeekers always been published 1 year apart, so they're always on the fall, and Do It for Home came out in the spring, in between. So that was one of the things I had to agree to, was that if I was going to write a non-Vanderbeekers book, it would have to be in the off season, like the opposite season. So I couldn't stop like the flow of the Vanderbeekers, which is really smart, because I do feel like readers do now expect, like, you know, at the same time, like that one would come out. Yeah. So, I mean, right now I'm finishing the last one, and I mean, I do have like sometimes these feelings like maybe I should just keep on writing these books. Like, why would I stop? I still love the characters, but I also don't want to have like a Babysitters Club situation where they're just like in 8th grade until like the end of time. So yeah, I do want it to be realistic, and I also don't want them to just like, you know, be 25 and I'm still writing these books. So I don't know. We'll see. I do think that, yeah, I don't know. It's like a conflicting thing. Like Jen said about like the book scavenger books, like, you know, like she's not ready to say like it's over completely. Like maybe there's still some stuff there that, you know, can still be another story. So we'll see.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I feel like I'm always curious about that, because as a reader, we get what feels like such little time with them by the unless somebody is really good at pacing themselves throughout a book, which I don't, most are not. It feels like we don't have that much time, and y'all have a lot of time, I imagine, living with them inside your brain. And so I'm always curious what that process is like. We have another great question in the chat. Tracy would like to know what inspired the lobster costume.
Oh, so initially the lobster costume, the costume itself. So there's a scene where Maizy, she falls on her bike and she's in a lobster costume, and that scene was inspired by one of my most embarrassing moments when I was a kid, when I fell on my bike, but I was not in a costume. I was just normal riding a bike, and fell in a crosswalk. It was very embarrassing, and it was really therapeutic to think about that and make it happen to a character, and then think like, how could it be even worse, and how could I make this funny? And so, you know, I thought, put her in a costume. And I think I might be misremembering this, but I feel like the lobster came in because at the time, my son, who might be embarrassed by me sharing this, I don't know, but he was like 4 or 5, and he was, we were big into the Lego Batman movie, and Batman loves lobster in the Lego Batman movie, if anyone recalls. And so that was a big thing. We were always playing Batman and Robin and lobster. I don't know, it was like a family joke. So it was another one of those things that amused me, and I put it in, it'll be a lobster. So I think, because initially when I wrote that, I didn't know why she was wearing a lobster costume, and I would start to ask myself questions, and eventually out of that I came up with, she's writing a movie called Shellfish Holmes about a lobster detective. So, you know, that all sprang from the Lego Batman movie, I think, if I'm remembering.
Yeah.
Lego Batman. What a shout out to Lego Batman.
Yes. You never know where the inspiration will come.
I do remember like going to that movie with I don't have a child, but we took a child to that movie, short version of that story. And I was not like sure that I was like in on it. And then like, I do think that my husband and I had like a better time, or at least as good of a time as the child that we took. And that was a real wonderful surprise.
Yeah, that says a lot. It says a lot about that movie.
Okay, here you guys talked a little bit about your research process earlier. So kind of revisiting that a little bit, but putting a new spin on that. Is there anything like, what's the most wild like rabbit hole you've gone down as you've like been doing research? Like, do you recall anything in particular that stands out?
I'm sure I've gone down really random. I mean, doesn't everyone with the internet? I just feel like, isn't that part of everyone's everyday life? There's some random question about, I'm thinking of something specific though. Let me see. Oh, I don't
My
know.
favorite is when we ask this question to like murder mystery writers, and they're like, yeah, my Google search history like needs to be like purged. Like it looks not great. Or like they type in like, I promise I'm not trying to actually kill anybody. And it like breaks into the algorithm occasionally.
Yeah, I'm sure I've researched some very strange things. I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head that I haven't put into my book.
Karina, have you ever gone down a weird research rabbit hole?
Yeah, I feel like I have. I mean, one of them is like for the book that I'm writing right now, but that one was sort of interesting because I realized I had to like reach out to some people to ask some questions, and it's just amazing how people just are so happy to like talk about what they know. So it's really nice to. I'm always like, oh, I don't want to bother this person. Like they're like super smart and have like an important job. And I'm like, hello, tell me about all these things that happened to you. And, you know, they were like so happy to help. And like they would refer me to someone and then that person would refer me to someone. And I feel like it's just really nice. I know that a lot of authors do that. And I think that yeah, we should do that more because I feel like we get a lot more good information. Yeah, so I was happy I did that because usually I just be like, no, just look it up on the internet. I'm sure the information is totally accurate.
Sure, I can Google and find out.
Yeah.
That's so fair. Okay, I think this one is a really fun question. What do you think would happen, from both of your opinions, if the Van de Beekers met Maizy, Nell, and Cam? Like if everybody ended up in the same city or somehow happened up at the same like park outing or whatever, and everyone was interacting, what do you think would happen?
Well, there would definitely be a lobster costume involved. I feel like
they would make a big like production together, you know, like I just feel like there would be costumes being made,
animals eating stuff they shouldn't.
It would be, I feel like it would be a pretty epic show that they'd put on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. I feel like, yeah, they'd invite like a lot of people too. Like they'd put on like it'd be like a quality show. Like we're not talking, there'd be some like intense lobster costuming. We're not talking about just a red piece of construction paper, right? We're talking like pretty intensely sewn. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, lots of food involved.
Right.
Food.
Yeah.
Snacks.
I kind of like want them to meet now. I don't know if y'all feel like doing that, but if you would, I think we would take it. I feel like you could give us just like a little chapter special or something.
There have been so many really good books of like authors like partnering together, like Rebecca Stead and Wendy Mass.
Yes.
They had the book Bob, or like I know that Hannah Khan and Adam Goodwitz have done some things together, and yeah. I mean, they always turn out really good. So maybe that's something we should think about, Jen.
I would love it.
I'll pitch it to your publicist.
Yeah, I know. And you're our new publicist. Thank you for volunteering.
Oh my gosh, incredible. Well, before we end for the evening, I do want to give a chance to also have y'all shout out. Are there any books that you're reading right now, aside from, obviously, we're talking about Van der Beekers on the Road and Sisterhood of Sleuths, but are there any other books that you think that we need to know about, books that you're reading or excited that are coming out?
Well, I was literally just reading I Do It at Home by Karina. So that also, here, I'll go grab two and you go, Karina. Okay.
Okay.
Right over here.
Okay. Well, obviously, like this is the book that I read recently that I loved, and I just thought it was so great. But I know Renee Watson is in your store and doing events with you, and I just love her her new chapter book series, Ways to Make Sunshine. I think that's the first one. Yeah, and then this is Ways to Grow Love that's coming out.
The Ryan Hart series.
Yeah, the Ryan Hart series. So I love those. Swim Team, the new graphic novel that came out over the summer by Johnny Christmas. So good. I really enjoyed it. And I was like very, felt like I learned a lot about something that I never knew about before. Just about like, yeah. So I really love that.
Our teen book club read that for over the summer, and they loved it too. It was
it was so good. And it was like his first book right out of the gate.
Jennifer, you look so proud coming back. You look so
I know, you're like, I'm ready.
Scavenger hunt, and I failed because I was disorganized and I thought I knew exactly where I put the books and I couldn't find them. So
you do have a lot going on right now. So, good pass.
I was going to show you Map Maker, but it's more Remy. I'm saying her name wrong, but Map Makers, that's her new book. And I have to catch my breath because I was just running. And Learning to Fall by Sally Ingofried. Those are two ones that I read that I love. And also another one that I loved was The Tryout by Christina Swintornbot.
Yes, that one's so good.
Yeah.
That's wild. I'll just like shout out a bunch of authors who have just recently been to our store.
Yeah, Christina was just there.
Hi, yeah. Are we doing a goodbye?
Yeah, is Gus there? We got to do a little meet and greet.
Everyone, we all get to experience the pet meet and greet together. What a fun experience.
This is the first time they're meeting. Look at Gus.
Wow. That's Lalo.
They're very excited to see each other, as you can tell.
Like, why is green in my face?
Why is this happening?
Yeah, it's making me very nervous. He's not gonna make eye contact.
You're like, I appreciate being held, but this like whole screen, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I truly can't think of a more perfect way to end our live than with our pets with us. I'm sad I'm not in my house. We could have added 2 more dogs. But this was truly incredible. You both are so wonderful. Like I keep saying, both these books, so amazing. And we do have them at the store. We have signed copies of Karina's books, and we have signed book plates for Jennifer's books. So they just like arrived. So they're fresh too. Jennifer signed them and sent them off to us. And so we love that. So please stop in and grab copies of your books. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us this evening. Feel free to keep chatting with each other in the comments. And and we all got some more like middle grade TBR growth tonight. So thank you both so much for that. Anything else you want to say before we leave the live?
Thank you for hosting us.
For having us.
It was great. We love the novel neighbor. We love St. Louis.
We do. Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to St. Louis. Well, again, thank you both so much, Jennifer. I hope you have a great rest of your book birthday week. I hope you have a calm plane ride and you get rest before you're off on the rest of your tour for the rest of the week. So thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.